Last week, the Spokane Police Department announced they identified the man who killed the 9-year-old Spokane girl Candy Rogers in 1959. One of the key players in solving the case was Othram. It's a forensics lab that processed DNA from the scene and narrowed it down to 3 brothers. Our Ian Smay spoke with the CEO of that lab about how they cracked the case.
Othram is a Texas-based lab that specializes in this type of DNA testing. It's called forensic-grade genome sequencing, and it's what the lab is focused on since its opening in 2018. As the lab CEO told me earlier today, their hyper-focus on the process has allowed them to give police investigative leads with smaller and smaller amounts of DNA. Last week, Spokane got closure to a cold case 62 years in the making. John Ray Hoff was identified as the man who killed 9-year-old Candy Rogers in 1959 as she was selling campfire Girl Mints. One of the key drivers behind the case being solved was DNA testing work done by Othram, a Texas-based lab specializing in testing small and oftentimes damaged samples from crime scenes.
Suffice to say that these are quantities of DNA that are wholly inappropriate for like consumer testing or other kinds of testing you would do in a research or medical setting. And not only is it lower quantity DNA, but the DNA is really compromised. It's old, it's degraded.
This testing on DNA taken from victims and suspects at crime scenes is all Othram does, allowing them to focus and continuously refine the process. Middleman's team is able to take that DNA, which sometimes is 1,000 times or more smaller than a sample used in a medical DNA test, and start building a profile. That profile is also built by comparing the results to genealogy databases filled with results from people who have agreed to provide their DNA for law enforcement purposes.
It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You know where the puzzle piece fits in relation to other pieces. You just don't know where it goes.
Through this, they start to build a family tree around the person who the DNA belongs to.
When we use the public records, we were able to narrow it down to 3 brothers. We actually found a husband and a wife who had 3 sons.
After they narrowed it down to the 3 sons, police took over the rest of the way. Eventually, they found one of Hoff's daughters, and after exhuming Hoff himself, police testing was able to confirm that the DNA was 25 quintillion times more likely to belong to him than anyone else. With the case finally solved, and Othram being a key player in the success, Middleman hopes this will lead to more investigations using their DNA technology.
I think it's important to share the stories, these wonderful outcomes, because when we do, it motivates and excites law enforcement. Law enforcement wants to solve cases, but they may not all know about this technology. And I think it helps families. They see that there's hope, there's optimism.
Middleman said that Othram is currently the only lab in the country that does this process completely in-house. He also said he hopes this is more widely used going forward, as it can both shorten the amount of time it takes to solve a case and can also save police departments money when it comes to investigative costs. In the newsroom, Ian Smay, KREM 2 News.